There will be a lot of information in this section because this covers a lot of the Sumerian achievements. Okay, so we'll look at the first writing system, their advances and inventions. The history nerd in me likes this section the best because it talks about, I always like looking at what a civilization has done for the world, and it also talks about the art that they developed in Sumer. So here is a great fact for your slideshow. Cuneiform system was the first system of writing. It is the use of sharp tools called styluses. You know styluses today as the little things that you use with your iPads and your smartphones and things like that. But the first stylus was they would take a wet clay tablet and they would take some kind of plant stick and they would sharpen it down and they would use it to make impressions in the wet clay, and then it would harden and they would keep those for records. The first system of cuneiform was used to keep business records, and then they started using their writing skills to write books about history, poems, and even some math equations. Um, as I said, cuneiform was the first system of writing. It used symbols to represent syllables, and they even had earlier pictographs represented objects. Sumerians, as I said, wrote on clay tablets with a stylus. Scribes, that's another name for writers. They kept track of items people traded and wrote down the government records. And as writing became more important, they moved up to social class. They wrote works of literature, stories, proverbs, songs, wrote poems about the gods and military victories, and these stories started becoming what is called an epic. And an epic is a long poem that tells the story of a hero. The most famous epic from the Sumerians is called Gilgamesh, and it was about a demigod that was dealing with the flood. So another example of a flood that destroyed the earth. We've talked about it in Judaism. We talked about it in Christianity. We talked about it in Hinduism. And now we're talking about it with the Sumerians and their religion. They also developed the wheel, which was a huge, huge development. Can you imagine cars today if we didn't have the wheel or dollies or anything that you use to transport something? They used it for carts and wagons, and then they even used it as a pottery wheel to use to create pots to store their food in. They also created one of the first sewers. They came up with a math and science. Their number system was based on 60, and they named animals, plants, and minerals. And then they even used medicines for healing and catalog medical knowledge. So here you have quite a few facts that you could choose from for your slideshow presentation. Oops, sorry about that. Let's go back in here. So their developments in art was architecture. The rulers lived in large palaces. Most Sumerians lived in houses with many rooms around a courtyard. They used mud bricks for their houses, so they never really ran out of materials. You want to add a room onto your house, you just go out and get some mud and make some new bricks, and you can add another room. Their pyramid-shaped temples that rose high above the city were called ziggurats. Sculptors produced many statues of the gods for the temples. Jewelry was an important item made from imported gold and silver. Engraved cylinder seals are one of the Sumer's most famous types of art. Let's see if we can go look at one of those real quick. You can see this is a, sorry, Safari blocks quite a bit of what we want to do here at school. If you can zoom in on this, you can see the different sources, and it was made carved around something like this, and then they would roll it across the wet clay, and it would take to that. Couple other things that we can look at here. I spoke of Gilgamesh. Here's a statue of Gilgamesh and what he looked like when he fought a lion. Here is the development of writing, a cuneiform. Some of it gets more developed, but some of it, as it advances, it looks nothing like what they said. Heaven, you can see a sun, and it develops into this right here. Grain, as I said, looks okay. Fish kind of develops, and you could say that's a school of fish. Birds, that's a bird. You have to turn your head sideways. You can see the body of the bird and the neck and the head there. Don't really see a bird in these things. Water, you can see water, and then I don't see the water there either, but they sure did. Here's a list. As we can see here, here's a cylinder seal. This is called a lye, which is a musical instrument. Here is a ziggurat. Made a bunch of gold idols, knives, things for religious ceremonies there. We looked at the river civilizations here. We also talked about Sargon. Here's his empire that he controlled there. And we'll talk about this in the next section. Okay, so that is all of section 3, and we'll move on to section 4 and